Geoffrey Chaucer is regarded as the father of modern English poetry. One of the most notable works of Geoffrey Chaucer is the Canterbury Tales. The Canterbury Tales was written in the latter part of his period, one of the most mature phases of his career. The Canterbury Tales is an effective display of the society of 14th century. Chaucer has carefully picked representatives from the society to be the characters of the pilgrimage they are undertaking. Now, one of the interesting characters of Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales is the wife of Bath. Today, we are going to look into the wife of Bath's prologue. Hello everyone, welcome to Unit 2, Chaucer, the wife of Bath's prologue, Lesson 2. In Unit 1, there is a mention of the wife of Bath's prologue as a representative writing of Chaucer, and from that itself we have gained the knowledge that the wife of Bath is not an ordinary character. She is a character which stood out of the conventions of the 14th century. In this unit, we will look into detail the characteristics and the various features of the most interesting character of the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. Before we move into the lesson, we'll just check what are the objectives that this lesson put forth to us. 1. This form of the Canterbury Tales describes the point where the wife of Bath has a chance to tell the fellow pilgrims her tale. So, as I have mentioned, Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales is a collection of different tales told by 29 different pilgrims who has come together to undertake a pilgrimage to the Canterbury to visit St. Thomas Becket's share. So, in this part of the prologue, the wife of Bath's prologue, we are introduced to what the wife of Bath has to tell as her tale. So, in this part, there is the description where the wife of Bath has a chance to tell the fellow pilgrims about her tale. Now, we are also going to look into the nature of the prologue as form, its role and function in portraying the wife of Bath as a person and her attitude to the society she lived in. So, we are also looking into the nature of the prologue and its role and function in portraying the character of wife of Bath and the perspectives, her outlooks and her attitude towards the society that she lived in. Also, we look into the views of the wife of Bath about men and women of the day and the relationship they have with one another, along with the ideological implications of her conduct. So, in short, we are going to deal with the part where wife of Bath has a chance to tell her tale. Also, we are going to look into the prologue as a form and its role and function in portraying or displaying wife of Bath as a character and her perceptions and attitudes. Also, her views about women and men and the relationship they share in the society. Okay, now introduction. In the words of Muriel Bowden, the woman is described as follows. So, Muriel Bowden has described the wife of Bath as follows. The wife of Bath's orderly and well set up appearance, as has been suggested, is in keeping with the strong directness of her character. She is one who has always known exactly what she wants and exactly how to get it. She desires and has obtained importance in her community, good times with gay companions. And there is something which is written in Old English. So, you have to understand that Old English spelling and the way of writing is clearly very different from the modern English. So, if we do not have the modern English translation, it is quite difficult to understand what is being written in the Old English script. Okay. So, you can see that in the way Muriel Bowden describes wife of Bath, she is unique in her own way. You must recall that in lesson 1 we have discussed that the 14th century negated the individuality. But as opposed to that, the wife of Bath is a character who has always known what exactly she wants. She has an individuality. She knows what exactly she wants. She has a strong directness and she has obtained importance in her community through her actions. So she is quite an interesting character as far as the century is concerned. So how exactly is the character unique? Is a possible question you can expect from this portion. എങ്ങനെയാണ് വൈഫ് ഓഫ് ബാത്ത് ഒരു യുണീക്ക് ക്യാരക്ടർ ആവുന്നത്? Her manner of speech, the way she addresses her companions and articulates her view of the surrounding world defines her person overall. Jovial and sociable by nature, the wife creates an ambience of spontaneity and flow where guards are down and the entire crowd of pilgrims would respond to her tale with empathy. They might hold an opinion different from that of her, but they would quite openly consider her opinion for what it is. For the critic Muriel Bowden, her characterization at the hands of Chaucer in the general prologue also constitutes a wide variety of love affairs and, as we shall hear, the excitements and pleasures of travel. So how exactly is she different? She has a different manner of speech, and the way she addresses her companions, she articulates her views, the way she presents her views, everything defines the person overall. She is very jovial and sociable by nature, and she creates an ambience of spontaneity. You know, when people are not very interested in talking, she creates a sociable nature, she creates an ambience of spontaneity, and where there will be a flow from the entire crowd of pilgrims, and they respond to her tale with empathy. And it is also said that even though people might have a different opinion, people might be differently from her, they would quite openly consider her opinion also. And that describes how interestingly she articulates her arguments. So it gives the listeners a chance to consider her opinion even though they might have a different perspective. And Muriel Bowden says that in the characterization of the wife of Bath in the general prologue by Chaucer, there is a wide variety of love affairs associated with her. Yes, the wife of Bath is connected with a lot of love affairs and also the excitement and pleasures of travel. So these are some of the things which makes the wife of Bath a unique character. The woman question, ramifications. It's an important section. Why? Because you might have understood by now that in the society where Chaucer lived, there was a certain fixed norms and conventions which the people of that time were obliged to follow. And in that kind of a situation, wife of Bath stands out as a character totally. So how exactly is she putting forward the different conditions of the women of that period is an important point of discussion. How Chaucer has depicted a character so unique that we might consider her to be altogether a different person standing out from the age. It was also said earlier that one might wonder from the description of wife of Bath's character whether women of that era experienced the same amount of freedom that wife of Bath had access to. So these are some of the points which will make us think about the condition of women at that point of time. And we have to know how Chaucer has connected that particular aspect with the depiction of the character, the wife of Bath. So the women question, ramifications. The way the society conducted itself and interpreted its institutions is the dominant angle of perception in the wife of Bath's tale. So you can see that in the wife of Bath's tale, she always stresses the fact that, yeah, this is the way the society conducts itself. This is the way it is. This is the way how the society functions. So the dominant angle of perception that is prevalent in the Wife of Bath's tale is the way the society conducted itself. In the text, the primary question is of the woman negotiating her life's path and the institution of marriage. In England of the time, women would be at the receiving end of male oppression and be treated as slaves without any rights. So in the whole of the text, the primary question which comes to our mind is how a woman negotiates her life's path and the institution of marriage. Because at the England of their times, women would be at the receiving end of male oppression. They would be subjected to numerous kind of oppression and considered as slaves without any rights. So, how exactly was her character or her function as a woman in the society is a point of focus here, not her inner worth. Okay. Now, males used their economic might to keep her in check. It was a male-dominated world. So, totally, you can see that when you consider Wife of Bath situation also, there was an aspect of economy as well, because she has mentioned that she had married for money. So, the chief power that males had was the economic might they had, economic power they had. So, it was totally a male-dominated world. Okay. So, you can see that in the Wife of Bath's tale, how the society is conducted is a primary perception being discussed. Now, what has Chaucer done with that? Chaucer has picked up a woman who went against the norms of the time, a woman of great strength, vitality and aggression. Further, she is outspoken. So, Chaucer has picked up a woman in such a situation who has come out of the shackles of the rules and regulation, who is totally against the norms of the time. She is a woman of strength, vitality and aggression. That is a point to be noted. How exactly is the Wife of Bath a woman of great strength, vitality and aggression? That could be a question. Her rural background is also particularly noted. The Wife of Bath means a lady of Bath. Lady from the city of Bath. Wife is the older term for lady. So, the place from where she came is a rural place and that background is particularly noted. So, how exactly is a woman coming from a rural background able to make a position for herself in the society? Okay. Now, fashionable and conscious in her own way, she carries a special aura. So, she is a person very unique from others. You can totally notice that. It is difficult to fiddle with her. She mixes up with the male folk as their equal in all respects. She has this sociable nature that she mixes with even with the men folk as equally in all respects. Now, she has come to join this group on her own accord. She wanted to come, so she came. So, she also has a house of her own. So, it stresses the point that she has some kind of power in the form of money. Yeah. Now, she rides a horse with as much as skill as a male would. Okay. So, she is not only a woman of, money, she also carries skills which only the men of that time had. So, she rides a horse with as much skill as a male would. And in social conversation too, she leads most of the time. She is also good at repartee. When it comes to elaborating a point, she can spin a web of words where arguing and counter-arguing are her forte. Earlier, there was a mention that even the people who has a different opinion from hers were able to consider or listen to her point of view, and that is clearly because she was very good with words. She had a strong quality of arguing and counter-arguing, and enabled by all these, she establishes a rapport with the fellow travelers and helps the whole company see the power of her social standpoint. So, with all these characters, she is able to make a mark of her own. She is able to create a position for her own and to show the others, to show the fellow travelers the power of this social standpoint that she is enjoying. It goes to the credit of Chaucer that she is given a whole length of representation as not merely a teller of a tale, but one who essayed a comprehensive approach to life. So, Chaucer has also portrayed her not only in the way of a person who is telling a tale, but also somebody who has a comprehensive approach to life. So, he has given some essence to the character. So, when you are asked a question about, the woman question which the Wife of Bath's prologue deals with, you are expected to answer how different is the character of Wife of Bath from the other characters, and also how exactly is she different from the normal woman of that time. How exactly Chaucer has chosen a person who is different, who has broken the shackles of the rules and regulations and made a standpoint in the society. So, all these questions, all these points along with the contemporary stage of the society at that point has to be discussed when it comes to a question from this part. Please note that also. Now, dramatic nature of the Wife of Bath's prologue. So, how exactly is the Wife of Bath's prologue dramatic? What makes it dramatic? That is what we are going to discuss in this session. Neville Coghill comments on the dramatic nature of Chaucer's art thus. So, there is a commentary on Chaucer's art by Neville Coghill. We'll look into it. Chaucer seems to describe one specific character with the same smooth, objective but friendly appraisal that he had bestowed upon the other pilgrims. There is no show of disfavour. He even seems to admire them for being so perfect of their kind, as a naturalist might admire a cobra, the finest in his collection. No doubt he took immense pleasure in creating them, and his ironical flatteries of them seem a kind of payment for this pleasure. Okay, so Neville Coghill is commenting that when Chaucer has created the characters, he has created each one of them with the same smooth objective but friendly appraisal. So, he has put, or the author has put himself in the shoes of the characters and tried to depict their character in a very real way, and the term friendly appraisal is to be noted here because it cannot be used together, both friendly and appraisal, but Chaucer has maintained a balance between these words and created a depiction of the characters that is so real and so naturalistic that one might admire the presentation of these characters. And also he has given a tinge of irony in them that gives the readers a pleasure when it comes to reading these characters. The format of the prologue is of dramatic presentation. The significant part of her role in the narrative of the Canterbury Tales is that she has a history of her own. This lends authenticity to whatever she would speak. Okay, so the particular format of this prologue is of dramatic representation, Now, Wife of Bath is significant in the narrative of the Canterbury Tales is because of the fact that she has a history of her own. She has an experience of her own, and this lends authenticity to whatever she speaks. The account she shares with the rest of the company is at the same time personal. Thus, the woman described as Wife of Bath is in the mode of an arguer and a committed person who will prove the strength of her case emphatically. So, she has a personal, feeling or personal sharing with the people around her. So, Wife of Bath is a character who is a person who is committed and also an arguer who could put together these two qualities when it comes to expressing herself or putting herself to a point. The prologue is not merely a link between the part preceding it and the one following it. The prologue has an independence that enables it to become an episode that would fit in broadly with the Canterbury Tales. So, the prologue as a form itself is very unique, that it is not merely a link between the part preceding it and the part following it. It has an independence of its own, and that makes it apt for the Canterbury Tales. So, we are now looking into the format of the prologue, and it clearly shows that the format is of dramatic presentation and how the person has been depicted, and also the prologue has an independent nature and authenticity when it comes to the character and the form. The wife in the role of teller of the tale. How exactly is the wife functioning as the teller of the tale is what we are going to look into. The prologue starts with a general comment from the wife Alison. Okay, you have to note that wife of Bath's real name is Alison. So, the prologue starts with a general comment from Alison. The beginning mentions the subject of marriage, that would be focus of her attention, and on it she would build an edifice of theory. So, she is beginning with the subject of marriage, and she has a lot to tell about that, and she is going to build commentary upon the subject of marriage. She refers to a consciously lived life that began at the age of 12 years when her first marriage happened. This was followed by 4 more marriages, one after another. Soon, she invokes religion to say that no precise number of marriages was recommended to a woman by the religious dictum. Now, she is going to talk about her own life, and she refers to the conscious starting point of her consciously lived life at the age of 12 years when she got married initially. Then, the first marriage was followed by 4 more marriages. So, totally she was married 5 times. Okay. It is said that she has 5 husbands at church door and many more. That means she has a lot of affairs, is what Chaucer is mentioning. Also, pertaining to the number of the marriages she had, she is invoking religion, saying that, see, I have married 5 times, but you cannot say that it is wrong, because no religious dictum has precisely recommended number of marriages for a woman, is what she is saying. Now, she brings in God to iterate that all that society believes in or sanctions with respect to the precise number of a woman's marriages or husbands is its own doing, not God's. And she is clearly making a point by saying that, see, you can see that God is not dictating a number, that a woman should be married only this many times, a man should be married only this many times. It's not the case. Whatever number is associated with marriage is something of a people's doing, something which people has made up. So, it has nothing to do with God, is what she is telling. And in her opinion, how marriages happen or the number of times they happen follows the decisions of humans. So, it is not something else which decide how many marriages happen or the number of times they happen. It's just human will, human decision. And she goes further in elaborating the idea and says that, see, King Solomon, you have heard about King Solomon, the wise king. He supposedly, he has more number of wives than the supposedly prescribed number of wives. That means there is actually no prescribed number of wives, but if you say so, King Solomon also has more wives than the supposedly prescribed number of wives. So, it's not a big deal, is what she is telling. Okay. So, she is putting forward her tale of her marriages. Now, moving on, the wife characterized. How exactly is the wife of Bath characterized? The wife talks about high qualities and frailties in humans. The context is of marriage, virginity, purity and self-control. These may be looked at from 2 angles. One is of being a strict adherent of morality in life's affairs, whereas the second is of being lax, having weaknesses of the flesh, for instance. She is supportive of the latter. So, when we look deep into the character of the wife of Bath, you can see that she talks about high qualities and frailties in humans. So, the context in which she is talking is about marriage, virginity, purity, self-control and all. And she is saying that one can look at these parameters in 2 different ways. one way is that you look it from the morality point of view and be strict with the life affairs, but the other point of view is of being, lax, lazy, having the weaknesses of flesh, having the weaknesses of passion, all those things. And she is supportive of the latter. She wants to be a little lazy about these things and wishes to have the weaknesses of flesh. And in accordance to that, there is a small passage in your SLM. It's actually in Old English, which talks about what she wants. That she is supportive of these things is what is mentioned. That you can just read it out. And all these, all the passages and all the references tell us that the wife is no preacher nor a pure person in her conduct. So she is not a preacher, she is not a pure person in her conduct. In fact, she is not a Christian observing rules of piety, even as she believes in God, Christ and the apostles. Her words are right and the practice is clearly faulty. Now, she is not a Christian who is, even though she believes in God, Christ and the apostles, she is not a Christian in the point that, she does not strictly observe the rules of piety. So, her words are right, but her practice is clearly faulty. No, but Chaucer has put in her mouth the central truth of human life. But Chaucer has cleverly put in her mouth the central truth of human life, because humans are like this. So, to be wife of Bath is to be human, is what Chaucer is trying to tell you. So, one cannot always follow the rules and, be attached to it so much. One will have the tendency to move out of that, to seek the pleasures of life. So, wife of Bath is clearly that kind of a person, and she is clearly human. This passage presents the core of Chaucer's wisdom and understanding. It expresses that doctrine of humanism Chaucer is famous for. So, the particular depiction of wife of Bath's character in this different way shows us that how Chaucer has expressed the doctrine of humanism when it comes to the character construction. So, he has given the wife a truly human nature, and that is what Chaucer is famous for, putting or creating characters which are humanly according to the doctrine of humanism. After admitting that she does not meet the high standards of righteousness, she asserts in her own inimitable manner the variety and diversity of men's and women's actions. Now, what she is doing? She is saying that, okay, I am not righteous. I do not meet the standards of being righteous. And now she is trying to throw light into the diversity of other men's and women's actions. She is now saying that the metaphor used to convey this is of a lord's household that has not all pots and pans of gold, but those made of other metals coexisting with golden ones. Now, she is using a metaphor here. In a lord's household, one could see pots made up of gold, pots made up of other metals also. So, not all the pots are made of gold, is what she is trying to say. So, to her mind, different kinds of vessels serve a useful purpose and prove their utility to the household. Every different vessel has a different purpose and it serves to that use in a household. So, the metaphor is cleverly combined with the humanity on planet Earth, where every individual human being possesses this or that proper gift or quality. So, each and every individual is unique in their own way. They possess their own qualities and serve different purposes. That metaphor clearly brings out the character of humans in the earth. Okay. So, they have their own proper gift which God has given, and God has not restricted him or her from following their pleasure. In God's eyes, there is no strict hierarchy of importance among His creations. He does not give an order, okay, you are important, next you are important, next you are important. That order is not present in God's eyes. Everything which is of hierarchical in nature is created by human. Now, you can see the Old English version of whatever Chaucer is saying regarding this. Okay. So, you can just read it, and as I told you, it is very different from the present day modern English. So, now you can understand how well the wife of Bath is characterized. She is perfectly human. She she is not only human, she also tries to make a stand of being human. Okay, I am human and I don't care, is what she is trying to say. The wife as an interpreter. So how exactly she is trying to interpret the world is what we are going to look into. The wife has her own way of interpreting God's message, full of wit and courage. The twists and turns in her comment impress us as, for instance, her announcement that she as a human being is not duty bound to follow God's words. Instead, she would observe the high principles in their breach, not observance. Further, she would use her energies for the fulfillment of pleasures afforded by marriage. Now, she has a different way of interpreting God's messages. She has the wit and courage to interpret whatever God has to say in her own terms. Her comments or the twists and turns of her comments impresses us. Why? Because he says that as a human being, I am not duty bound to follow God's words. Okay, I am a human being and God has certain, if at all God had said something, there are things to be followed, but I am not interested in following, is what she is saying. Instead, what she is saying is that she would observe the high principles in their breach. She wants to break that, not in observing the rules. She wants to fulfill the pleasures of flesh afforded by marriage. She is clear what she wants in her life. That is very important here. Now, Chaucer's choice of words is exemplary, a method and vision that links him with life's realities in the surrounding world. So, how Chaucer has picked out words to depict this character is really commendable, because that brings him closer to us at every point of time. She is aware that social codes and norms are human made and serve the ends of living at levels of body and mind. This works at variance with supposed virtues of piety and chastity. Now, she is aware that whatever social codes and norms are there, they are all human made. Okay. And it works at different levels. She is not at all concerned about the working of these human-made social codes and norms. She is the woman of the world. She is energetic and confident. Her way of reading the norms of the time is based on her interests, not of the society to which she belongs to. That is clearly important. So, she is a woman of the world and there would be norms, but her way of interpreting the norms is based on her own interest and not based on what the society wants from her. See, you can relate to it even now in this aspect. Why? Because sometimes we feel that we are forced to live in the way that society wants us to lead our life. But wife of Bath is clearly a person who is standing outside that line. She does not want to live her life in the way society wants her to do. She wants to follow the norms and the conventions in her own way, in a way that would suit her own interest. So, that is important here. Also, when she is trying to tell these things, the partner who is yet another character from the Canterbury Tales, expresses a mild censure. He is very uncomfortable with whatever she is saying. He cannot agree to what the wife of Bath is saying. So, he is saying that, okay, I thought of getting married very soon, but now that I am hearing all this, I have to rethink about my marriage, is what he is saying. But wife of Bath clearly says that I am just presenting my views. I am not here to hurt anybody's feelings. So, she is very direct in her character, in her points. The wife's account of her marriages is also interesting. To her, the first 3 marriages got her money and lands, and the husbands possessed wealth for which she married them. So, she knows what she has done. She is saying that the first 3 marriages I got enough money. I married them for their money. Okay. They were clearly very older than her, and she just married them for their money. And she did not mind the age gap because her eye was on the resources. Also, she has treated them cruelly, because cruelly, not in the exact terms of cruelly, but she has an upper hand of being a younger person. So, she had these people in her hands. She toyed with them. She handled the 3 husbands cleverly, keeping them on toes. She would accuse them for ogling the younger women in the neighborhood and go her own way when it suited her. So, she used to complain about their behavior, but she had her own behavior, her own way of life. Now, such a revelation of her talking skills lets the audience know that as a woman, she was doubly as successful in terrifying men as they would be in bullying women. So, she was a very successful woman in terrifying men. Doubly successful in terrifying men as they would be in bullying women. So, how woman will be bullied by the men, she was doubly successful than that is what her talking reveals to us. Now, there is a dialogue which is rendered in modern English. There is also the Old English version in your SLM, which she says, "You say that oxen, asses, horses and hounds are tested many times, and the same is the case with basins and pots that men buy. This applies as well to spoons and stools, etc., the items in use at home. Think the same way about utensils, clothes and tapestry. Why not are the women tested the same way till they enter wedlock? You old fool! Then only you say, we come out in our true colours. Further, you remark that I am angry since you did not admire my looks, did not call me charming lady and all that. Such as you were made to spend so much money on my birthday, got me a good dresses, respected my maids and put up bravely with my father's relatives and acquaintances. Thou Haggard, outdated barrel full of lies." Now, she is making a very strong comment on the ways of men. She is saying that, see, you say that everything is tested before they are being bought, then why not women tested like in the same way before they enter wedlock? And without testing, you say that we come out in our true colors only after marriage, and you have to endure us so much, you have to buy us so many things, and you supposedly act as being, the good person who has been tolerating the woman. Why are you being involved in all these things? You are telling a lot of lies, is what she is commenting. That's very interesting, no? The Wife of Bath's prologue from the point of view of form. So, we are looking into the form of the prologue of the Wife of Bath. As representation of the character of Wife of Bath, it presents the trend of how a person is imagined and projected in literature. So, when you look into the prologue, you can see that how a person is imagined and projected in literature is greatly exemplified in this part. And this was actually a new tradition, or there was no earlier tradition of storytelling which presented a character in this particular way. So, it created something new in the literature of the time. And the most important thing is the dynamic idea of a human being, the way one handles the self and the way he or she is interpreted by the reader. So, presenting a character as a human being and trying to depict her point of view was very different back then. The trend assumed a distinct shape with time and reached its zenith in Shakespeare's drama more than 200 years later. This trend, which was settled by Chaucer, assumed a distinct shape only after 200 years when Shakespeare started writing drama. Okay, so this character representation was greatly unique. Now, the character imagined as an individual. You have to also keep in mind the background where the quality of individuality was being negated in the age of Chaucer. So, you have to keep that point in mind and see how this particular character of Wife of Bath is being imagined as an individual. In Chaucer's The Wife of Bath's prologue, the wife is imagined as an individual who understands her world concretely. So, she is an individual who knows what she wants. She understands her world concretely. Her analysis is steeped in a deeply understood reality of the time. She understands the reality of her time well, and whatever she is wanting is clearly the result of that understanding. And with respect to the conduct of husbands, she has a great deal of wisdom to convey. Even when it comes to the conduct of husbands, she has a lot to say. Are husbands masters of the household, or who run its affairs together with their wives? The questions raised in the text relate to social rights. Now, when you are discussing Wife of Bath's prologue, these questions of social interest arise. Are the husbands masters of the household, or are they supposed to run its affairs together with the wife? These questions are raised in this particular part. For the wife, women in matrimony are held on a tight leash. The Wife of Bath says that women in matrimony are held on a tight leash. She points out that women are compared with items of use in the home. Earlier, we came across a dialogue which she has rendered, right, in which she herself compares women to things. That is actually an indirect representation of the normal comparison of or normal objectification of women. Just like other things are being used before they are being bought, women's are also to be done in the same way. She is putting it in an ironic sense. So, she is pointing out the fact that women of the time were compared with the items or were objectified. The custom is that they are supposed to be tested the same way as vegetables or pots and pans. If money was spent on the wife's upkeep, it is for making the man respectable. That is an important point. So, when a man is spending money on wife's upkeep, it makes the man respectable. The complaint of the wife is serious even as she makes it dramatic. What is the complaint? There is a double irony in this. The point made by the woman is serious and the passion with which she argues makes it laughable. So, she is complaining about the position of women at that point of time. But that sort of presentation makes it serious as well as dramatic at the same time. So, this is the point of individuality we are talking about. She has individual concerns of her own. Now, idea of type as built into the prologue. So, what is the idea of type being built in the prologue? We note that in the Wife of Bath's prologue, Alison fights against the gender difference strongly. So, that is the type of the character being set up by Chaucer. She is somebody who is fighting against the existing social norms. She fights against the gender difference. Now, also, through her character, we can see that she has been targeted as a woman all her life. She invited criticism for not being a true wife. She was expected to be a wife in set norm, but she did not follow that and she invited criticism for the same. And in relation to the husband, she always found herself helpless. Whether it was money, land or privilege, she had to work extra and use tricks and stratagem for ensuring gain. So, when it comes to marriage also, she had to work hard to gain these things. She had to play some tricks. She had to use some strategies to ensure that she is getting all this. But none appreciated her quality of mind or ability to mobilize opinion. She had qualities to be admired of, but nobody ever noticed that. She was typified as a character who is an outcast, who is very different from the society that had these particular norms. There is no reference in the text to her personal skills. If she expresses an opinion, people interpret it as an affront. Also, even though there is a mention that she is very good at presenting her argument, she is very good at counter arguing and so on, there is no reference to her personal skills per se. Even when she is expressing an opinion, people interpret it as an affront. Consider that in the company of pilgrims, people hear her talk only for amusement, not listen to her for any gain or benefit. So, even people when they are listening to her talk, they take it for amusement, not to gain something. They do not think of it as a productive activity. This invisible prejudice that the people have on Wife of Bath rattles her and makes her feel uneasy and insecure. So, this results in her being worked up in the middle of her introductory remarks. One reason why her prologue is so long, unlike those of other characters, is that no one takes her seriously. Also, her prologue is very long, and the reason is that when she starts talking, people just hear that, not listen to it, and they do not take it seriously. And this is not merely the case with the prologue. In real life too, she is not taken seriously. Whenever she wants to express an opinion, her opinion is not taken seriously. So this absence of individuality is part of Chaucer's realism. So you have to understand that Chaucer has presented the wife of Bath as an individual, but at the same time he has sucked out the major parts of individualism from her character without us really noticing that, because till now we were talking about how exactly individualistic is her character, but now we come to realize that even though she is presented as an individual, she loses, or she is devoid, she is restricted from having an absolute essence of individuality, and that is the brilliance of Chaucer as a writer and how he has presented his character in a realistic way. It is suggested that women particularly got their identity from marriage or family, seldom from strength of qualities and skills. So Chaucer is clearly trying to establish the practice that was followed in his time, that even if the women has qualities of their own, they have worth only from the identities like marriage and family and not from anything else. So even when wife of Bath is glorified as an individual character, she lacks this particular essence of individuality. So that is the type of character that Chaucer has built in through this prologue. So we have come to the end of today's session, and we have discussed the wife of Bath's prologue in detail, looking into the aspects of the prologue as a form and the individuality of the character, the role of teller, and the woman question, its ramification, all those parts. Most of the parts discussed in today's session is really important, and you could get questions from anyone, especially the part where the individuality of wife of Bath is mentioned. Please read that. So all of you should look into the SLM that IGNOU is providing. It is the first hand material, so you have to read your SLM thoroughly. Then you have to go through the exampedia and value added notes that we provide and look into the questions and the points which you have to recollect, and also assess yourself by attending the objective test. I'll see you in another video. Thank you.